Today we'll see um, the architectural styles under distributed computing. Students, can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Students, as I told in the previous class, when it comes to architectural styles under distributed computing, there are two styles. One is software-based architectural style and another one is system-based architectural style. So today we'll study about software-based architectural styles. So software architectural styles are based on the logical arrangement of software components. So first we need to understand what are software components. So when you consider software as a system, what makes software components? Any idea, students? What is the meaning of software components? The subsystems within the software will make software components. Say for example, if I consider operating system as a software, so what are the submodules and are the subsystems under that? Under operating system, so for see, kernel can be the main module. So then under that there can be, within the kernel there can be process management, file management, memory management. So what are these? These are the subcomponents, isn't it? Like that, when you consider a software, the software can be divided into subcomponents and we may call them as subsystems or modules. They are helpful because they provide an intuitive view of the whole system despite its physical deployment. So they provide the intuitive view of the whole system, and it will also show us in what way the components are connected to each other and how the data flow is happening between the software components. They also identify the main abstractions that are used to shape the components of the system and the expected interaction patterns between them. So what is the meaning of abstraction? Can you give an example for abstraction, students?
Sir, ATM.
Hello?
Sir, ATM.
Huh?
ATM.
So you should be a little bit loud.
Sir, ATM.
Okay, yeah. So how it can be an example for abstraction?
Because sir, we are only taking the money and using the application which is developed, but we
Yeah.
don't know what they used for development and all. In the backside, we are just seeing the front end information, sir. So they are hiding the
Okay.
internal information.
Okay, fine. If that is your example, then any software can become the example. Because if you take any software, we don't know actually how it has been implemented. Just we interact with it, isn't it?
Yeah, sir.
Not,
Any
not
software.
only ATM, any software.
Yeah, sir.
See, the meaning of abstraction is that it provides the interface. So what you told is correct. It can be any software. So that provides us the interface using which we interact. And we will come to know what is the functionality, but we will not come to know how it's implemented, what is its underlying logic, all those things. So that's called abstraction. Okay. Say for example, if you consider a system, say for example, there is faculty module and consider one MIS system which has got student module and faculty module. So it's just an abstraction which will tell you what are the functionalities provided by each module, isn't it? It will provide you the abstraction about what are the functionalities provided by each module, and using the interface you can access the functionalities, but it will not reveal how the functionalities are implemented. So that is called abstraction. Now we'll study the types under architectural styles. Students, here there is one mistake in this PPT. See, this is supposed to be software architectural styles, not the system architecture. This is supposed to be software architectural styles. So under that we have so many variants. First is data centered, Then commonly used under that commonly used architectural style is repository and Blackboard. And under data flow, this is one more variant. So this is pipe and filter, and another type is popular type is batch sequential architectural style. Then another architectural software architectural style is virtual machine architectural style. So one is rule based and another one is interpreter architectural style. And another one is call and return model. So it follows the top-down approach, where you can take your C program as an example. So main program and subroutines which follow top-down approach. And another example is layered systems. Example TCP/IP or OSI system. ISO-OSI system. You can consider that as an example for a layered system, where the lower layer will provide functionalities to its upper layers. Then independent components, so communicating processes, example, and event systems. Now we'll see all these things one by one. First we'll see what are data-centered architectures. See, data-centered architectural styles are those where the main emphasis is on data. So how to model the data, then how the data is flowing between the software subcomponents. So that has to be taken care of. So that means the main emphasis is always on data. These architectures identifies the data as the fundamental element of the software system, and access to shared data is the core characteristic of the data-centered architectures. So here you need to remember one thing, that is shared data. How to provide access to the shared data so that all the software components will share the same that address space. Within the context of distributed and parallel computing systems, integrity of data is the overall goal of such systems. That means they are telling that the main goal of this data-centered architecture is data integrity. So what is data integrity? So data integrity means like when the system is distributed and when you have so many data centers. For example, when I say cloud is an distributed system which contains so many distributed data centers. So when you execute a transaction at a time, that updation has to be synchronized such that the data is updated consistently across all the data centers, so that you can achieve data integrity. That means, so when you access data from any of the data center, you will get the appropriate results. That means the data is integrated. So a very good example for this is the banking transactions. So the moment you execute the transaction, the data has to be updated across all the data centers. Then only we say that the data is consistent and the data is integrated. So in DBMS, when you study the ACID properties, one of the main ACID properties is integrity. So that's what the integrity tells. Then in case of repository architectural style, and this is the most relevant reference model in this category, that is repository architectural style. So in case of repository architectural style, what happens? There will be a common repository that will be shared between multiple software components, and it is characterized by two main components, that is the central data structure, which represents the current state of the system, and a collection of independent components. So independent components are nothing but the software modules which operate on the central data. So in this model, you will have common repository which will be having access to all the software components, and the another major component is the software modules. Then the ways in which the independent components interact with the central data structure can be very heterogeneous. So that means, see, there is no like particular way like this is only the interaction should happen. So each module can be of heterogeneous type, and each software component can interact heterogeneously. In particular, repository-based architectures differentiate and specialize further into subcategories according to the choice of control discipline to apply for the shared data structure on particular interest or databases and blackboard systems. So in the next slides, in the coming slides, we'll see what are database systems and blackboard systems. In the repository systems, the dynamics of the system is controlled by independent components. See, the dynamics of the system, the meaning is that means the dynamics means the what are all the internal activities that are happening is controlled by independent components. Why it is independent components? Because each component is designated to do one meaningful task, so that each component can take care of only its corresponding tasks, not about all the tasks, so that it is controlled by independent components, which by issuing an operation on the central repository trigger the selection of specific processes that operate on data. Now we'll see what are Blackboard architectural styles. So when you say Blackboard architectural style, so it is characterized by three major components. So one is the knowledge sources. So these are the entities that update the knowledge base that is maintained in the Blackboard. See, students, first of all, we need to understand the Blackboard. See, Blackboard always will tell you what is the functionality, and it will not reveal about how it is being implemented. So these are knowledge sources. These are the entities that update the knowledge. See, that means there are certain modules which will be designated to update the information. We call them as knowledge sources. Say, for example, so let us assume there is one module which is doing this job. Let us assume its task is to do data scraping. So data scraping means it's a process of fetching the data of our interest from a particular portal or a database, and do this task and periodically keep updating the system. Okay, one such system can be an example for knowledge sources, and that can be done through data scraping. Say one example for data scraping. Say, for example, if I consider the example of library. Say, for example, I want to know what are all the textbooks that are published by Orally. Orally is a publisher name. Okay, it's a publication. So I want to know, and that too very specifically computer science. See, Orally publishes textbooks of various disciplines, including medical, engineering, arts, commerce, and so on. So now my interest is I want to know the Orally publications, and that in that I am particularly interested in computer science books. Okay, so apply suitable filters. It will apply suitable filters, and it will fetch only that data, and that can be done through data scraping. So data scraping is actually an automation process. Next, Blackboard. This represents the data structure that is shared among the knowledge sources and stores the knowledge base of the application. See, Blackboard, it represents the data structure that is shared among the knowledge bases. Say, for example, that data structures can be a flat file system, or that can be an database or a common repository. That is called Blackboard, and that is the data structure that is shared among the knowledge sources. So see, ultimately knowledge sources, when they fetch the data, they have to store it somewhere, and that will be stored in the Blackboard. So the example for Blackboard can be therefore a flat file or some database or some repository. And the control is the collection of triggers and procedures. Students, you need to understand in database. Can anyone tell me what are triggers? Hello, students? Hello? Arjun? Deepika?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yeah, tell me what are triggers? You're studying database, right? Tell me what are triggers?
Events.
Hmm?
This is nothing but events.
Yeah. Then
Uh,
Sir, Arjun, sir.
Event or condition that occurs, sir.
okay, you're telling something related to that. Yeah, tell me. Vishal.
Sir, Arjun, sir.
Yes, sir.
Arjun, tell me.
Yeah, sir. Sir, any code, it will automatically get executed, sir. Trigger means.
Yeah, see, upon satisfying certain condition, it will trigger an event. Okay, that itself is not an event, it will trigger an event. Say for example, say you want to buy something. Say for example, let us assume on, say for example, the share market is a very like, it will happen in runtime. See, every time it will keep changing the price, isn't it? Say for example, you want to buy some particular share, you'll set the trigger. Say for example, TCS share, if it, say let us assume early at morning 9:30 it was trading at 2300 rupees. If it comes to 2200 rupees, you should buy 10 units. That means you are setting the trigger. So the moment it reaches 2200, it will automatically execute the transaction on your behalf. So like that, you are setting a trigger. So now here the trigger is nothing but it's a stored procedure which contains set of instructions to do that transaction, whatever you want. So that is called trigger. See here the trigger is part of the control component. See, under Blackboard architecture, we have three major components: knowledge sources, Blackboard, and control. So control is nothing but the core logic. So the triggers and procedures are part of this control, and that govern the interaction with the Blackboard and update the status of the knowledge base. So here you need to understand the role of each of these three components. Okay. So whatever the controlling part within the software system, that will be taken care by the control. It will decide what events to execute, when to execute, how to execute. Then knowledge sources represent the intelligent agents sharing the Blackboard, react opportunistically to changes in the knowledge base, almost in the same way that a group of specialists brainstorm in a room in front of a blackboard. So here the first point you need to understand, knowledge sources represent the intelligent agents. So what are intelligent agents? Here the meaning of intelligent agents are so here, say for example, so now just now I gave the example of the trigger. Okay, so intelligent agent. So that intelligent agent, that is the software component, which it is actually identifying the event and executing at a particular time. When the price reaches 2200, it is executing. That means it is intelligent. So we can call that module as an intelligent system, isn't it? And it will react opportunistically. That means what is that opportunity? The stock coming to 2200, that is an opportunity. So when the opportunity has come, you have to seize the opportunity and commit the transaction. Then update those changes in the knowledge base. So knowledge base and also in the repository. Blackboard models have become popular and widely used for artificial intelligence applications in which the Blackboard maintains the knowledge about a domain in the form of an assertion and rules, which is entered by domain experts. See, that means they are telling Blackboard models are very useful to develop AI-based applications. That is artificial intelligence-based applications. And these things maintain the knowledge about a domain. Say the domain can be anything. That can be in a finance domain, that can be retail domain, that can be healthcare, any domain. Okay, and the data are entered by domain experts. Okay, so in each and every domain there will be some people, we call them as domain experts. So they will enter the data, and these these systems, that means Blackboard architectural style based systems, operate through a control shell that controls the problem solving activity of the system. So as I told, the controller, that is nothing but the controller that is responsible for controlling the flow of data and to take decisions within the system. So why to take decision? To solve the problems, it has to take the decisions. And particular and successful applications of this model can be found in the domains of speech recognition and signal processing. That means very good successful applications in this, which are based upon this Blackboard architectural styles, are speech recognition system and signal processing. Students, what are speech recognition? That means when you interact with a computer using voice command, it will understand your language and accordingly it will take necessary actions. That is called speech recognition. And signal processing. What is signal processing? Signals will be captured and it will be converted into digital signals, that is zeros and ones. Then the data will be processed. That is called signal processing. So signal processing, that is especially, that's a part of communication system, digital communication system. Okay, now we'll study data flow architectures. So in data flow architectures, as I told, the main emphasis is on data. So here two things are very important. The first thing is how to model the data. So data modeling is nothing but how selecting an appropriate model so that you can demonstrate how the data is flowing between the components within the system. Then, so first thing is how to model the data. Then second thing is how to deal with data, like data storage and retrieval. So for that, sometimes we go with repository model and sometimes we go with some other data models as well. So under that, first let us see the first point. Access to the data is the core feature. Data flow styles explicitly incorporate the pattern of data flow, since the design is determined by an orderly motion of data from component to component, which is the form of communication between them. That means mainly it will address how the data is flowing between the components and in what order the. So when you take the example of data flow diagrams, what happens? See, when the data passes from one stage to another stage, so it will be processing the data. That means in each stage, you can see some conversions happening. Especially when you take the example of state transition diagrams. See, when the data is flowing from one state to another state, see, it has to update the state. Why? Because the data is getting translated to another form. Say for example, you have a source program. So before getting the actual output, it has to process the data. So it will be creating the object file, then the exe file, and so on. That means a lot of conversions are taking place, isn't it? So that is called state transitions. Styles within this category differ in one of the following ways. So that is how the control is exerted and the degree of concurrency among components and the topology that describes the flow of data. So that means that within the styles within this category can differ based upon how the control is exerted. That means how you are implementing the control within the system. So whether the control is centralized or when the components are independent, so then the control is not centralized, and the degree of concurrency among components. That means, so whether any components can take actions in concurrency or at any given point of time only one system can execute. So how you are modeling the system. And the last one is the topology that describes the flow of data. That means how you are modeling the flow of data within the system. Now under that, the first variant is batch sequential. Students, what is the meaning of batch sequential? See here there are two terms, batch and sequential. Batch means you are grouping together common jobs and hence you are calling it as a batch. Then another thing we need to understand how the batch system will execute. Always the batch systems will execute sequentially. That means first take the job 1, execute it, finish it, then go for job 2, execute, finish job 2, then go for job 3. So that means always batch systems, in case of batch systems, will group together common jobs to make it one batch, and we submit one batch at a time. That is called batch system, and the batch system will always execute sequentially. The batch sequential style is characterized by an order sequence of separate programs executing one after the other. That's what I told. And these programs are chained together to provide us by providing an input for the next program, the output generated by the last program after its completion. So that means, so there can be dependency such that, so when the task 1 finishes, the output of task 1 can be fed as input to task 2. Then similarly, when the task 2 produces some output, that can be fed as an input to task 3 and so on. Then next style is, the example for these systems include many distributed applications for scientific computing are defined by jobs expressed as sequence of programs. That means scientific applications can be the example where the jobs are fed and it will be executing in sequence. For example, pre-filter, analyze and post-process data. It is very common to compose these phases using the batch sequential style. So students, we need to understand what is pre-filter, analyze and post-process data. See, before applying the filter, so what we do actually, we'll just organize the data. That is called pre-filter. Isn't it? See, pre-filter, see how to, see when the data is not organized, you cannot apply filter. If you want to apply filter, say for example, let us assume you have an Excel sheet. So to apply before applying the filter, you need to make sure that, say for example, there are some 5 columns, say USN, student name, okay, test marks, pass or fail, and percentage. Okay, so when the data is not organized, obviously you cannot apply the filter. If you want to apply the filter, so you have to first organize the data. That is called pre-filter. Then applying the filter, you can analyze. Then post-process of data. So example for post-process of data means like you may generate the report. So that can be the example of post-process data. It is very common to compose these phases using the batch sequential systems. Next is pipe and filter style. So it is just a variation of the previous style of expressing the activity of a software system as a sequence of data transformations. Each component of the processing chain is called a filter, and the connection between one filter and the next filter is represented by a data stream. See, for this, the ideal example is the pipe and filter concept of Unix programming. Say for example, ls-l, then file name, pipe, grep command. Okay, see now ls-l file name means it will give you the total information about the file. So that is maybe the file permissions, number of links the file is having, owner of the file, group users, others, and that date and time of creation of the file, and the file size, and so on. Then see, then in that you are searching for some particular data, hence you are applying grep command. Now for grep command, where the input is coming, the input for the grep command is coming from the ls command. So that can be, so now here each command is acting as a filter. Hence we can call that as pipe and filter style of documenting a system. It's a variation of previous style of expressing the activity. What was the previous style? That is a batch sequential. So it is, if you do a little bit modification to that batch sequential, so it becomes the pipe and filter style. Here, for expressing the activity of a software system as a sequence of data transformations. Each component of the processing chain is called a filter, and the connection between one filter and the next filter is represented by data stream. That means how you are connecting the different chains. So that means one stage and the other stage you are connecting through data stream. So now in my example, so the output of ls minus l, I am considering that as a data stream. Okay, so which is acting as input to the grep command. So that's how this pipe and filter style will work. Then the comparison between batch sequential and pipe and filter styles. So if I consider batch sequential, so pipe and filter, that is, so it is not, see, this is coarse grained and this is fine grained, not file. It is fine grained. See here, coarse grained means, see here, actually you are not combining the activities. You are first waiting for one activity to complete. Okay, then you are executing another activity. Whereas in case of file and pipe and filter, multiple activities are organized into a single statement. So when you write the command, when you are combining the Unix commands using the pipe symbol, actually what you are doing, you're combining multiple commands within one statement. So that means ls minus l is also executing in the same line, and grep is also executing in the same line. So hence we call it as fine grained. And here it is coarse grained. Coarse grained, the meaning is that, okay, each activity is separate. That means the first activity can be seen as instruction 1, second activity can be seen as instruction 2, and so on. Whereas here when I write an Unix command by using the pipe, entire line is considered as one single instruction. Hence we call it as fine grained. It is not file, F-I-N-E, fine grained, it is fine grained. Then there will be a high latency in case of batch sequential. Okay, and in case of pipe and filter, the latency is being reduced due to the incremental processing of input. That means here it is, say for example, you are performing 5 tasks, that means 5 different instructions. Hence the latency is more. But since here, even though the instructions are 5 in number, you are combining all the instructions into the single line. So therefore, as a whole, it becomes one single instruction. Hence the latency is reduced in case of pipe and filter. So therefore, if you ask me which will execute faster, either batch sequential or pipe and filter, then what is your answer, students? Which will execute fast, job sequential or pipe and filter? Hello, anyone? Hello? Hello, Arjun? Vinny? Spurti?
Sir,
So my question is, which will execute faster, batch sequential system or pipe and filter system?
sir, batch.
Why batch? Give me
Because
the-
high latency, sir.
See, high latency means, see, waiting period is more. Low latency means waiting period is less.
Sorry, sir. Then pipe and filters.
Yeah, pipe and filter will execute fast. See, I told, say here the job one has to execute. So let us consider the job one to execute. You have instruction number 1, which can take care of first job, and instruction number 2 will take care of job 2. Instruction number 3 will take care of job 3. Okay, so therefore the latency is more. So latency is high latency. Whereas here pipe and filter, I am combining all the 5 jobs inside a single line. So that means it is one single instruction, and hence the latency is reduced. So therefore pipe and filter executes faster than batch sequential system. Then another difference, in case of batch sequential system, external access to the input. So there, okay, so the input, so external access to the input means, say for example, you can pass input from another file from the keyboard and so on. And here, whereas in case of pipe and filter, it's a localized input. That means it will not ask you to enter the input. Everything is already provided. Okay, that means local input. It will only take the input. Then batch sequential, it is non-concurrency. Whereas in case of pipe and filter, so concurrency is possible. Then batch sequential is non-interactive. So then in case of pipe and filter, interactivity awkward but possible. That means, so interactivity is awkward, which is not suggested, but if you want, you can, okay, so you can make it interactive. Okay, students, can you give me one example how you can make pipe and filter interactive? You all have studied in Unix, isn't it? How you can make pipe and filter concept interactive? Okay, now I'll tell you an example. Students, tell me the difference ls minus l space $1. Okay, that is scenario 1. So that is one instruction. In scenario 2, I'll consider ls minus l filename.txt. Which is interactive, scenario 1 or scenario 2?
One, sir. One, sir.
Scenario 1. How it is interactive?
It taking input from your $1 ones, we have given output in earlier stages, and it's taking that one.
Yes, that means while executing the program during runtime, we are passing the input, and so that in that sense it is interactive. Whereas in the second scenario, we are telling what is the input file. So that is non-interactive. Okay, then okay, that means in case of pipe and filter, we can make the system interactive. Batch sequential, it is non-interactive. Why? Because when I say batch sequential, it's a batch file. Already we have created the instructions. So when you execute the batch file, it will not ask any input from the user. So hence it is non-interactive. Your task is just to submit. Okay, it will take care of everything. So that means in that sense, batch sequential system is non-interactive.
Sir, what is concurrency?
Huh?
Concurrency. What is concurrency?
Concurrency. Okay. Say for example, you'll say in Unix we have a concept called semicolon. You tell me when we use semicolon.
To separate, sir, from one command.
Yes. So when you want to execute, so another way of achieving concurrency in pipe and filter is, say for example, you can schedule one task to execute in background, and another one in foreground. Okay, so when you want to do multiple jobs, what you can do, you can schedule some activity to run in the background. In Unix, what is the mechanism that we use? If you put ampersand, so that means that particular task will be run in background, and if you do not put, by default it will be running in the foreground. So you can make one task to run in the background and another one to run in the foreground. So in that sense you can achieve concurrency. Whereas in case of batch sequential, so by default it will run everything in foreground only, not in background. Next variant under software architectural styles. Okay, another category under software architectural styles is virtual machine architectures. Okay, so we all know, so what is the use of virtual machines? So why? Because in I think in almost all the labs we are using virtual machine for one or the other purpose, isn't it? So tell me, students, what you are doing with the virtual machine actually? Why or in what way the virtual machine is necessary for you people? With what purpose you are using virtual machine? Tell me.
Sir, because it allows multiple operating systems, sir, we can install whatever the things we want, like.
Okay. Say for example, you are having only Windows, okay, and you want to install some application. Say for example, something which say some
Windows
application
XP.
which can be run using Unix system. Okay, let us assume like that. Then if that is your requirement, so you want to install. So then you have two options. That means install install Linux by partitioning your OS. So whatever the memory you have, you partition that, then install full-fledged Linux OS, then install your application. That is one choice. And other choice is, so just go with the Windows, then install one virtual machine, then inside that install Linux. Okay, that means take one ISO file, then put it in that virtual machine so that you can use Linux, isn't it? Then you can install whatever the application you want in the Linux system. So now here the role of virtual machine is to provide you the facility so that you can deal with multiple operating systems. Okay, say for example, you can have one virtual system, and in you can have multiple operating systems. So you can have one Macintosh and you can have one Linux. Okay, what is your core operating system? Is Windows. Your core operating system is Windows, and by using the virtual machine VMware, so you have installed Macintosh also, and you have installed Linux also. Okay, so now that is the role of virtual machine. So actually what happens when you install virtual machine? What are the resources that are shared? What are the virtual resources it will create? For each of the operating system, what it will create virtually: the RAM, secondary storage. Okay, so and everything, what are all the resources required to execute the jobs. All those resources will be created virtually for each of the operating system that you have installed on VMware. Okay, so therefore the virtual machine class of architectural styles is characterized by the presence of an abstract execution environment. That means, what is this VMware doing? It is providing the abstract execution environment, generally referred as an virtual machine, that simulates features that are not available in the hardware or software. See, by default, your existing hardware or the Windows operating system are not providing the facility to directly install Linux upon that or Macintosh upon that. So that is made possible by virtual machine, isn't it? Then applications and systems are implemented on top of this layer and become portable over different hardware and software environments. That means you are having some, say for example, say you have a Pentium i5 processor. Okay, then some Seagate secondary storage. Okay, and then some RAM of some 4 GB. Okay, the same. So and some motherboard architect, some motherboard, say some Intel motherboard. Okay, by using these components, you have installed Windows, then you have installed VMware, then upon that VMware. So that is actually, what is VMware? That's a middleware software. Upon that, further you are installing Linux and Macintosh. And now this Linux and Macintosh have become portable so that you can install it on VMware. The general interaction flow for systems implementing this pattern is the program defines its operations and state in an abstract format which is interpreted by the virtual machine engine. That means the general interaction flow for systems implementing this pattern is the program or the application defines its operations and state in the abstract format which is interpreted by the virtual machine. We call it as virtual machine engine. So virtual machine engine is one which will process the instructions which are stated in the abstract format. And the interpretation of a program constitutes its execution. So interpreting the program means it has to execute that program, and it is quite common in this scenario that the engine maintains an internal representation of the program state. So now, what is the meaning of internal representation of the program state? I told the ISO file. So the ISO file is considered as the internal representation of the program state. Then virtual machine architectures, they are the popular examples within this category are rule-based systems, interpreters, and command language processors. Okay, so next we'll see what are rule-based systems, interpreters, and command language processors. So these are the examples for virtual machine architectures. Students will see these things. That means, so from the next class we have to continue with the examples of virtual machine architectures, or what are the subcategories under virtual machine architectures. So we'll stop it here itself. We'll continue in the next class. Now I'll take the attendance. Asta Bachawat?
Yes, sir.
Abhinav?
Present, sir.
Aishwarya?
Present, sir.
Arbaz?
Present, sir.
Arjun?
Present, sir.
Bhargavi?
Present, sir.
Deb Malya?
Present, sir.
Deepika?
Present, sir.
Gangubai? Gangubai? Guriya Kumari? Guriya Kumari?
ಸರ್ ಗಂಗೂಬಾಯಿ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಸರ್.
ಹೇಳಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ವಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ನೆಟ್ವರ್ಕ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಸರ್. ನಾನು
Guriya
ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ.
Kumari? Junja Singh?
Present, sir.
Kavya?
Present, sir.
Lata?
ಎಸ್ ಸರ್.
Manisha?
Present, sir.
Pavitra?
Present, sir.
Maithili?
Present, sir.
Priyanka?
Present, sir.
Pawan Kumar?
Present, sir.
R. Akash?
Present, sir.
Rakesha? Rakesha absent. Ravi Shankar?
Yes, sir.
Rizwan?
Present, sir.
Vishal?
Present, sir.
Savita?
Yes, sir.
Shruti?
Present, sir.
Sneha?
Yes, sir.
Spurti?
ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಸರ್.
Srinidhi?
Present, sir.
Vaishnavi?
Present, sir.
Vinny?
Present, sir.
Students, that's all for today. We'll see you in the next class. Thank you.